Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to Between the Lines. I'm Avira Bukhari, and today I have with me an author, a writer, a teacher who has been a lot to me personally and who is everywhere these days. She talks about the in betweenness that I'm really fond of, and her books are such that you dwell into a world and find meaning and try to find home where there's none. Welcome here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you have all for you. Whatever questions, throw it them at me.
All right. So, we'd be talking about dialogism. I think. How about you just tell us what it is and what do we understand it to be, right? And how significant it is for people of South Asia and specifically people of Pakistan.
Okay, so you know what? Whatever we're having right now is also a dialogue. Yeah. So dialogism is something which stems from our lives. And I wanted to focus on something for my, for PhD dissertation. You also want something that will live on, not for decades, but forever. So, as we all know, dialogue is something that began with maybe not even the caveman, but with the Big Bang, and will really go on. God forbid, even if we have an apocalyptic future, it will go on even if there is a rock and a riverbed, there is a dialogue between that too. So, I teach green literatures, and we talk about the dialogue between the natural world and ourselves also because we're part of that natural world. So hence, I wanted to explore dialogism. But I go back to when I was 12 and how that triggered me to look into it. And that time, I didn't even know that this theory existed because, of course, I was 12. So I was in a class with my British teacher and she asked a question. What is the significance of 1857? Yeah, this is a class which has international students, foreigners. They were not aware of a lot of the things that happen in South Asia. So I immediately raised my hand and I said, War of Independence. And she said, no. I looked at her and she said, no, it's British mutiny. And that got me thinking that not only did she negate my truth that was instilled in me for the past 10, 12 years, she's giving it a new name also, which means there is another truth out there, which means that her truth doesn't necessarily have to be wrong or right. It's her way of looking at it. It's the perspective that she was brought up on. And I was brought up on a different perspective. From that day onwards, I decided that I'm not going to look at anything from one angle. So if I'm sitting here, I would like to know what is happening at the back. Rather than me telling you what's happening, I'll ask you. It's that simple. And you'll ask me. And if there are more people there, each person will contribute and give a new way of looking at it. So dialogism is when you bring in the other's perspective into your frame of reference. And then only you can move towards a supposed whole entity. We tend to do, what we tend to do is we sift, filter, and we've tried to focus on what we think of what has happened, right? So even with partition literature or other literature, German history, any history, history then becomes monologic. I have had many debates with historians. They say, no, we're not monologic. But I say, just by placing that question at the end of your chapter in world history and saying, who do you think started the World War is not contemplated enough. You have not included the colonial history in world history. So history comes from a background of an authority, which is the institution that asks you to write, and an historian. What I've gathered over the period of years is that art and literature has that capacity to connect you to the world through its various mediums, and novel being one of the most important. That's why Bakhtin, now M.M. Bakhtin is the proponent, or he started this theory of dialogism, and he believed that Tolstoy was his characters or his author was all encompassing, was authoritative. And as Dostoevsky was giving you a very engaging author, but not being the only authority there. So authors are nobly now. If you read your books, they are there. They're not dead. The ghost lingers, even in my books, the ghost of Serena lingers somewhere, but doesn't have to be my experiences, but it will be my interpretation, right? And it's just a voice. It's one of the voices. It's never the only voice. And that's what a dialogic novel does. Same if you look in an art piece, even these colors, anything that is related to art and literature, you, me, someone else will look at it very differently. So their voice as a reader and an audience also comes in. So hence dialogism becomes extremely important for us to engage with. Our talk shows are within the talk shows you have interruptions, you don't have the authority to you are constantly interrupting the dialogue. That becomes a problem. Dialogue is also utterance.
Yeah, since it's not just about stories, it's about voices and multiple voices. Now I think that people have really begun giving space to others. जिस तरह history में अगर हम देखें, so normally we fix truth है, we know who is erased and why are they erased. Over time we get to understand कि हाँ, since we find even in Train to Pakistan, I think we do not have women saying much, but then again their silence is a way to, communicate.
Exactly. Absolutely. You said it. So, dialogue is also utterance, which means that if I'm saying something, it is in response to something that was said before, and it is in anticipation of a response. So, it's a connection between past, present, and future. So, all these novels that we work on, even poetry, but novels, they had the capacity to give you that much scope because they have characters. Right? That's why novel becomes even more so because it has so many characters like Ice Candy Man. You have the Monsieur, the Ice Candy Man, the Aya, and nameless characters. Yet they're voicing their. So in Train to Pakistan, initially it was called Manu Majra, but the editors decided that it should be Train to Pakistan. You see a connection already. Yeah, it's not train from India. You see a connection to Pakistan, right? And the train itself is a very dialogic feature in Train to Pakistan. So the silences that you mentioned in Train to Pakistan, if anyone has read it, there is a character Hukam Chand. Now he's a Hindu magistrate. While we may love or hate him for his policies, he wants at the end to orchestrate the event of the train going to Pakistan in a manner that there is least bloodshed, right? But because he goes, and that happens only because when he goes to and enters a train, he sees mutilated bodies, breasts cut off. And he looks at it and he opens his mouth to scream, but the scream doesn't come out. That scream that doesn't come out is a voice. And initially, it's so beautifully written. I've had many people contend with me that no, it's a very superficial novel. No, say, no, it's very deep. Yeah, when you begin your story, it begins with women, children, dogs, cows, bullocks playing in the same muddy land. They're playing together. There's a dialogue between them. And at the end, what you see is bullocks, horses, men, women, corpses lying on the river. That is harrowing, but it also connects how these the natural world also. We don't realize the impact of war and cracking of land on the natural surroundings, on animals. So he's given voice to animals. He's given voice to gecko, the blizzard that is there, and Mehukab Chand looks at it. Then he's used characters like Iqbal with no surname. So he could be Pal Chand, he could be Pal Singh, he could be Muhammad Iqbal. So these are what I call shared symbols. And to have a mosque, mandir, and a gurudwara in the same vicinity. For this, I went to do my research. I went to a mandir, I went to a mosque, and there's a gurudwara in Nankana Sahib. I've taken pictures of it because I also teach visual methodology. So in the picture, you see the Gurudwara and you see the crescent and star of a mosque. They're in the same vicinity, and that's how it has been in India forever. So it's possible. So again, partition is not because of religious demographics, it's because of religious fanaticism or religious arsenal.
So there's a wonderful line. Since you talked about Iqbal, he could be anything, right? So, and he didn't care. So we have a character, Meet Singh. He's wonderful. He lets everybody in. He includes everybody, and he's always concerned about the fact कि इकबाल ने कुछ खाया है या नहीं खाया, and he's there. So humanity stays और religion का इतना नहीं अब खटाना है शुरू में. So what we get to is Iqbal asks him, "Do you like American Badri's preach on Christianity in your village?" And he says, "Everyone is welcome to his religion. Here next door is a Muslim mosque." And he also says another thing that the mullah says Alava, but the priest at the Sikh temple lies in bed till the mullah has called. Yes. So he waits for him to finish. So that very idea of consideration comes in. Absolutely. I am so glad that you picked up on this, Alai. And people valued each other. It's not that they always had the idea of religion in mind. कि अच्छा ये है वो मतलब it was there. लेकिन फिर over and they're driven by fear, by pressure, and even within them they have a constant struggle. जैसे I think internally भी dialogism exist कर रहा है. वो जुबित सिंह के कैरेक्टर देखते ना कैसे लव और हेट और वो वाली सारी चीज चलती है सो आई थिंक इंटरनली भी देखिए तो इट्स देयर राइट so the dialogue is when the mullah waits for one call of prayer and meeting waits for the other call of prayer. That's dialogue, yeah, right? You wait for the other and then you do it. Don't you have to do it all together? That's what I saw at the Namgana Sahib Gurudwara as well. That there was this kind of tacit understanding, right? And right outside the Gurudwara, there is a on the wall. There's an water. It says pani, right? So it's a water tap where everyone can come and fill up their urns or whatever. They can even drink water there. But above it, right above that, is written Ya Allah, Va Guru, Ram Ram, Khudawan Kare. Okay, so or for in religious identities of an eclectic God, right? And how universal water is. Water is a universal thing. It doesn't, air and water don't know who, where, and what it is. So the whole idea of incorporating all of that outside of Gurudwara, that it is open for all. Water is there. If you don't feel that you should have it, you can read all the names of the god and accordingly. So these places of worship were actually dialogic spaces like langar at a Gurudwara. And this is the research that I did. I went to a Gurudwara and I had food at the langar. It was open for all. And then Data Ganjbakhsh and all, you have these Sufi saints. So there's another book, Shadows of Time by Masroor Nikar Meher Nikar Masroor. Unfortunately, she passed away the year her book got published, so it never really got the attention it should have. But it speaks about Sufism and how our region, Punjab in particular, is conjoined with Sufistic thought. She over and over again, she's speaking about Khwaja Farid and she's speaking about Data Ganj Baksh and how you are masjid, mandir, and Magus temple. You are Hindu's sacred book as well as the Quran. You are knowledge and its absence too. So she keeps bringing this fact till that there was a time when we were integrated because of this Sufistic thought. And but there were reasons why we were made to split the cracking of India. And then calling it cracking of India cracking India at one continent and calling it ice candy man in another continent. All these things have agendas. So white Mughals also something. It's not just Hindus, Muslims that were split. British also. So they came in as conquerors, right? Initially, they came in as traders. They adopted our way of life. They started wearing salwar kameez. They started eating pan. They started marrying into our Muslim women. So their children became white Mughals. White Mughal is a very dialogic concept. But when news traveled to Great Britain, that they adopting our ways rather than the other way around, they simply will lose our Britishness. So they decided to put a ban on this. You cannot carry a Muslim woman or a Hindu woman. So but while it was happening, it was a beautiful way of life because naturally they couldn't wear the uniforms in this heat. They had to wear cotton. Naturally, when you go to a environment where a certain kind of food is served, you go to eat that food. Your way of eating that food, you'd adopt the same. You'll have chopsticks in the South Asian, Far Eastern region. So they started eating with their hands. This was something that the British couldn't because they were losing their Britishness. So in this very text, there's a line ke Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan. So where do Sikhs go? What is your idea of this? So Sikhism was devised as a dialogical. It was to connect Hindus and Muslims. And
in within their gurdwaras also you have sayings written from the Holy Quran, Kabir saying, and you have Hindu sacred. In the Granth also you have sayings for the Holy Quran. So the initial idea of the religion was a dialogic religion. You have to connect the two. Now, at the time of partition, the divided rule, they were used also, of course they were used. But what Khushwant Singh is trying to say is that there were the Akadis and there were the others also. And Meet Singh, even Jugat Singh for that matter, because these are people in Hukam Chand and Jugat Singh who are connected to Muslims through love. Hukam Chand likes a singer who's Muslim, and he says that singers and artists don't have written hair, right? So through love, these, and when Muslims were supposed to depart, Manu Majra, the Sikhs were crying for the Muslims. So he tried to show that love as well. But there were those who had been pumped up to think into this. Now, at the time, of course, they were not debating upon whether India is going to be just Hindu. They were focusing on, so it's a beautiful line in the book also, India is constipated with humbug. Take religion. Hinduism is all about caste and cow protection. Muslims are all about their circumcision and kosher meat. Sikhs are all about their long hair and hating Muslims, right? And Christians, Hinduism with the solar topi, Parsis, vultures and feeding the vultures and fire worship. The ethics, which is the kernel of all religions, has been carefully removed. Now, the word carefully is very important because some entity wanted it removed. The ethic, how do you kill your neighbor? How do you kill your friend? This was, so my novel that is coming up called Maina, A Saga of Migrations, begins from 1944 and it's a parallel frame story. There is a 2003. So my contention, and I've written my postdoc research was also on how the colonized victim that we were, how the narrative shifted to the perpetrator of post 9/11, right? So I've spoken about that, and within that, this is what I'm tracing, that they are neighbors, Sikhs, Muslims, Hindus, they're playing together, they're going to the fields together. And how do you slit the throat of your friend? So it requires a conspiracy. It requires a which has been there for, kind of simmering.
But then one begins asking whose purposes are served. When, people love each other, even if we talk about ourselves, we wouldn't hate anybody, just like that, or especially on the basis of religion. The question arises that none of us ever say that our grandparent killed this person, the other person slaughtered, but there was a slaughter. What Mondo said was, do not say that 100 Muslims were killed or 100 Hindus. Say 200,000 humans died. Humans. The human factor was detached from it. The neighborly, the friends. Religion, like in Ice Candyman also, Babsi Siddha says through Lenny that they were fine till the names were also not shown because they were fine as friends. Till religion became a religious arsenal. Your identity of the kirpan, of the sword, it was just your religious identity. But when you used it, then it became an arsenal. Khushwant Singh was here traveling and I met him years ago. He came to Canada and he said, this dress that I have all the 5Ks and the dress that I wear is just for my cultural identity. I don't follow religion. I'm an atheist. So those things were his cultural identity as well as his religious identity, but they were misused and abused by people who wanted to leave our land in a manner that it would be a land of strife forever, which we've seen. Each nation that was given its independence suffered. Many of these nations have suffered because of the borders that were designed and how they were designed. So that is all it was pre-planned, all of this. But we cannot say that minority, because we were a minority, that causes problem. It is not minority. I've worked on my research that minority is just numbers. It is not about
that you're not powerful because you're a minority. Why are you even a minority? You're a citizen of Pakistan. You don't have to, you're a citizen of India. You're not a minority. You're a citizen of India, right? So what happens is when we start instilling this idea of minority, for example, Hyderabad state, you had 80% Hindus, but the ruler was Muslim. India itself, you had a majority of Hindus, but the ruler was Muslim, right? So it's about power. It's about power. So when you leave someone with power, but you now democracy, of course, requires you to have majority. So that became a problem. Hence, we had this division, and all of these were political demands as well as religious, but mostly political demands, which is fine. Um, and maybe Sikhs have a political demand as well for their homeland.
And in the formation of truth, I think everybody adds to it, to the truth. So there's no truth.
Yes. So if fiction is a lie that tells the truth, okay, so we have to incorporate fiction into our frame of reference also. But I say truth is a lie the moment it is retold. It's fiction. Truth is fiction the moment it is retold. Now, why and how? When I'm speaking to you and if I narrate to you a story that happened to me, something that happened to me today in the morning, it won't come in a linear fashion. I will be filling in the gaps. And then I fill in the gaps. What do I rely on? My memory. Right. Batsy Sidha relied on her memory also. Khushwant Singh also relied on his memory. Memory is the most unreliable. Right. It doesn't come in as it is. It does. So when you have these gaps and ellipses, you're filling them in with fiction. So per se, you are narrating a truthful story, but the moment I retell it, it becomes fiction. And that is why you have miscommunication. That is why when you report something that happens, there is room for the other's perspective also. Because you never know. It's not a film that the flashback will be as is. You will be adding on to it. So that fiction becomes very important too. Hence, our fiction is very important.
But I think in literature, when we're talking about certain incidents, so then fiction is a myth.
Right? It's just a label. Okay. Fiction is a voice. Right. It's one of, for example, Manu Majra is a fictitious witch. It wasn't there and it isn't there. But it provided a lens, it provided a voice. It showed how the trains also, when they were coming, the bridge would ramble. And then when the train started coming, they were not hooting. And these were trains which were carrying dead bodies. So that could connect us to any village in India. It doesn't necessarily have to be Manu Bajra, but Manu Bajra became a voice for all the villages in India. So fiction thus has the capacity to give you different voices. And that has to be also incorporated into our frame of reference. Art has to be brought into our frame of reference. When we go and to museums or we go to art exhibits and we see partition from that lens has to be brought into its, even the book covers. For example, this book cover, it's an award-winning picture, and it has, in the larger frame, it has the Gurudwara here as well as the Buddha's statue and the Bachai Mosque and Mary's statue. So all of these incorporated show that there was this shared existence. I tell you what happened. So when for this book, Dialogue or Partition, literature knows no borders. Okay, my first call that I got was because it won an award before it was published. So my first call I got was from India, University of Delhi. And of course, I could only do it via Zoom. Then I got a call Afghanistan. There was one on Khalid Hosseini's. I have a book on Khalid Hosseini, Cultural Confessions. So I started saying Zoom knows my borders. Okay? So the professor from University of Delhi asked me a question. He said, but Dine Lai bhi to tha na. That showed that dialogue is not the only way forward. I said, but Dine Lai was not about dialogism. See, Dine Lai was asking for a synthesis. Now, synthesis and dialogism are different things. I'm incorporating your view, but I'm giving you exclusivity. My slogan is inclusivity with exclusivity. You retain your exclusive way of looking at it. I retain my exclusive way. So it's like a potluck, like khichdi. You have grains of rice, grains of lentil, you have grains of cumin seeds. Each retains its own texture, visually as well as taste and flavor. But if you mash it, then it becomes a synthesis. Then you are eradicating its exclusivity. So the only way forward is to include but retain an exclusive diversity, not that of flavors. So there that lies the problem. When we try to subsume the other's view and personality or voice. So anything that, yes. And that means your truth also. You have an exclusive truth. There are so many incidents that we see happening on a daily basis and they're reported, right? Reporting is what you see, but we are analyzing it these days. Our journalists are analysts. So what we think about what we see. But who wants us to think the way we want us? So all reporting is also carries agendas with it. So all books, all truths, they carry agendas. We all know about Foucault, power, knowledge, and truth. So a certain political party will have its own way of looking at it. So that certain news channel would have it. So we know it in America also. Everywhere else we have all these news channels which are funded by certain organized. So has its own agendas too. Like a lot of our syllabus does not carry, which comes from the West, anything on colonization. But our work does. And now also institutions will change their way of looking at history. So history is again very fluid. But we try to institutionalize it, hence it loses its dialogic quality.
So recently I read Wes Khan's work as well. And having read your book and also that of Muhammad Hanif, I came to this point that now writers put themselves out of the text and then explain things that are bold enough to be said otherwise, because not everybody has that temperament to sit down and read the book. And when I read something, I think कि हाँ, इसके बारे में मैं आउट लाउड नहीं बात कर सकती। जैसे रोबेल इंग्लिश अकेडमी में भी बहुत बोल्ड स्टेटमेंट्स हैं अबाउट द सिस्टम और वो स्पेसिफिकली मतलब लेबल करते हैं, ये नहीं है कि नहीं। सो नॉर्मली व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग हम सोचते हैं 100 बार, लेकिन आई थिंक लिटरेचर ऐसा मीडियम है, स्पेशली राइटिंग बन जाता है वो ना कि आप एट लेंथ कुछ भी लिख सकते हैं। पोट्री वाले।
So, my favorite pet thing is, it's like a formula that I've made that there is just one thing, which is who am I? And if you read Oedipus Rex, you read Hamlet, Macbeth, you read any of these and you read Adrian Rich, Sylvia Plath, you read Kijana Mekon, Bulisha, you read Itpad, all of these. So it revolves around who am I? So this is what is prevalent in poetry as well as literature, written novel as well as art. And while we are trying to find who am I within the characters, we're also trying to trace ourselves within the character. As writers also, we're tracing, because naturally we're connected to the characters somehow or the other. The reader is also connected to the character. The reader is as much of a creator as any writer is, Awais Khan or myself. The readers, because you will probably come up with a concept in my book which I was not even aware of, and I've seen that happen to at many book launches, that my professors or someone else will find an angle that I wasn't even thinking about. Like they're detached from it. However, that who and I connects us to the audience. Theater ho kya? We connect to the audience even if you're not a literature person. You will connect. Poetry, everyone reads poetry. No, you don't have to be a literature student. This who light connects you to that. So it has that capacity to link chapter, because I presented to one of the chapters in Japan, and there nobody even knew that India Pakistan had separated, let alone. So I said, how am I going to connect them? And then when I started speaking, there were so many countries which had the same problems, same issues. So many, they wanted to be in friends with their neighbors, but politically that was not possible. So we connected through that who am I and the stories.
But then again, this who am I? I tell you one thing. When I had my podcast on your book, I told the incident when you came to our class on very first day. You asked us what literature is about, and then you had the satsa ke, who am I? हम सारे लिटरेचर में वही ढूंढ रहे होते हैं। सो ये तो मैं बहुत सूफी एस्पेक्ट देता है आपकी राइटिंग्स को भी, एंड आई थिंक यू आर अ सूफी राइटर। आई डोंट नो अगर आपने इस एंगल से देखा है, लेकिन आपके वर्क में ट्रांसेंडेंटल एक टच है बहुत ज्यादा। It's there.
Because I believe humanism से आगे चले क्या? It's not just humanism. There was a time I would be talking about humanism, but planetarianism, the galaxy that we live in, because naturally, now we cannot, because I teach green literatures also, we cannot detach ourselves from the planet life also, the planets, the plant life, the animal life. We are connected through all of this, and which means that we connected to the entire universe in that sense. So we are in dialogue with all of this at all time. Also now we are in a dialogue with AI also. We have to keep that in mind. So unless we incorporate all of this into our frame of reference, we will not feel empathy for any of this. We will not feel for the plant that is withering, or the ecology that is affected by war. Nobody talks about the ecology that is affected by war. And of course, at the time of partition also, how many animals lost their lives too. So many things are related. So it's not just Sufistic thought is beyond any of these barriers and boundaries. In fact, the boundaries begins a presencing, it's very porous. So one of my stories, which is from boundaries to boundaries, it's a question that I'm posing, that, when you leave one boundary, you think you're going for greener pastures to another land, you're entering another boundary. My God, one is never free. Yes. So unless you free yourself, you have to find happiness within yourself. If you look to maybe another country that I'll migrate to, or you look to another man that you marry, or another, or your children, you won't find that happiness. You have to free yourself. So from boundaries to boundaries, it was that if you keep thinking that I'm leaving Pakistan for Canada, it'll be a better life, you're entering a set of boundaries there.
Yeah, so that's a trap. I can have an escape. Since you've talked about your book, I know it wouldn't be wrong to bring in Crested short film. There's a story. Tease. Do you remember the storyline or not?
Yes, yes.
That one story remained really confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
What is your idea of that story, by the
So I was in Sri Lanka, and I saw this woman fasting. She was carrying a whole load of keys on her back. It was a basket. As you might, if you Google it, you'll find such images. And she's crouching, and she's carrying it. And there were so many women who were doing the same. It got me thinking that the tea plantation that I was living, it was a hotel. She converted the tea plantation factory to a hotel. So it was the same building structure. It was just corrugated iron and everything, but turned into a hotel. British, actually, when they came here, they realized that the potential of these tea leaves and everything. So it got me thinking that this woman, or any woman at that time, must be carrying this burden of tea leaves for an afternoon cup of tea at London or somewhere, right? Which is fine, okay, this is how trade is. But it got me to thinking, what are their lives like? The factory workers and everything. And hence the whole story is around the colonial, because that factory turned into a hotel was very colonial. They had retained all features of colonization within it. Now, I'm not one of those who says, oh, let's decolonize. I say move forward. The moment, when you keep talking about colonization, that means you're still somehow dwelling on the word colonization. So how can we just, yes, also? We got, and that's why I've seen in English also. My connection with English, I used to wonder also, because I was in an international school, so naturally it's survival. But afterwards, while I'm in Canada or whatever, why do I need to speak English? Because it's part of my heritage too. Like Urdu was created. Urdu was a dialogic language per se. It's army Lashkari language, but it was a dialogic language so that the Lashkar could speak to each other. We brought in, as Muslims, we brought in Persian and Arabic to this land, and we expected everyone to adopt it. So English was also brought to us. Let's not politicize language. Let's not it was part of our heritage. Hence, we were speaking that. So, colonization was part of our heritage too. Wrong, right is a different debate. Let's move forward. Let's what we gained from it. Our institutions, like for example, King Edward, we gained a lot as well. But what we didn't gain from it, we can learn from our mistakes and move forward. So tea leaves for me was this colonized mindset of the Sri Lankan family over there that because Natia is half British, we're going to use her name as and her features and her to sell our factory better, right? But the workers could not connect with that. So how this dialogic land where they're living together, Muslim and Hindu married to each other, turns hostile. Because again, there is a political agenda behind it. We've experienced that too. We've had a Sri Lankan, I think he was a supervisor here, sadly. So we should, for me, it was a question that why do we have to carry the same burden or not? Why can't we just be who we are rather than look into our colonized roots?
Okay, Dr. Serena, in one of your stories, there appears a golden bear. Who is that?
Someone who lingers outside of your body. Of course, she's existing in my story. She's there. But again, like I said earlier also, um, the protagonist is trying to find happiness outside of herself. She must look inside herself first. And that she others herself from that golden girl to connect with her husband. She's trying to find a way of connection to her husband. And through that girl, she manages to do that. Whereas she could have done it with an inward look, right? But I might have mentioned it sometime earlier, ever, that what is the difference between art and literature and maybe, photography or other things? How do you differ that this is art, this is literature, and this is not, right? So if there is a picture which is, we used to look at all these Raphael ki paintings and nude paintings bhi hain aapki, dusri bhi. But how do you say this is art and this isn't? It's that inward journey. The moment you look at maybe a model and her into her eyes, and you wonder what her story is. So it's also called defamiliarization in creative writing. I've used it a lot, which is that you pass by your guard, your someone on a daily basis, the leaf on the floor. The leaf also has its own story. So where they defamiliarize you. Inspiration हो सकती है, वो muse हो सकती है, news हो सकता है. Yes, so muse हो सकता है. You defamiliarize yourself from yourself also.
But says Shiri as a woman is judged for her complexion, अब वो कितने मसले हैं उसके ससुराली में, said right तो कैसे उसको उससे inspiration, maybe the golden girl is something that she wishes to be herself.
She wishes herself to be as free as the golden girl, right? Which the freedom again is something that she could have found herself. At the end, I'm not going to give away the end, what the enigma she finds herself in, because the story is in the cocoon, right? And when you enter a cocoon, you can become a moth or a butterfly. But when you enter the cocoon, you are going to rejuvenate and come out as someone different, right? So that doesn't mean it's the end of it all. So it's yourself who is she's pulling herself into this quagmire, into this uh, quicksand. But she could have found that. So even if that golden girl becomes her muse to find herself, uh, it's eventually herself that she has to. It wasn't enough. Golden girl was there for a few days, but it wasn't enough. Had she just looked within herself, her needs, her desires, her wants, she might have found that freedom. But looking to your others will not. This is my way of looking. If you connect, even if you're doing your PhD, for example, and PhD becomes your end goal, and that is the only goal. That's where you become. That's where the trouble is. Your family, your children, and it cannot be just one thing. You have to take everything along with it. So her happiness is also one of the important things in her life. She has to bring it along with the rest of the issues that she's facing.
In another story, there's a storm outside. we have an entity appearing. Yes.
What about it? What do you think that entity is?
Hamza.
Sorry?
Hamza.
Okay. Okay. Could be.
और ऑल्सो आई हैड दिस इंटरप्रिटेशन कि हो सकता है निमी को एक कि वो शी इज अभी मिड ओल्ड राइट और उसमें एक है कि मुझे एक्सेप्ट किया जाए या उसको प्रेजेंस कहती है कि कि तुम्हें क्यों लगता है कि तुम्हारी वालदा तुम्हें छोड़ के चली जाती है मतलब कंप्यूटर और द गाय दैट यू विद वो क्यों है तुम्हारे साथ देखो तुम्हें ब्रेसेस लगे हुए हैं तुम इतनी प्यारी नहीं हो सो वो जो एंटिटी है वो उसको एक्सेप्ट करती है और उससे मोहब्बत करती है और उसको कहती है कि आई वुड स्टे आई वुड लाइट एवरीबॉडी एल्स हार्म यू सो आई थिंक वो जो उसको श्योरिटी मिलती है ना कोई अब मैं आई डोंट नो हैव अ वर्ड लेकिन एक जो उसके अंदर वर्ड होता है ना वो फिल करता है
So, what these stories are focused around the concept of home. Okay. Sand of the Castle, the collection's title. We all, as women or men, we try to build these castles. That this is going to be our home and the beauty of it and everything. But whether it's made of concrete or it's made of sands on the beach, it has sand in it, which makes it fluid. So our whole concept of home is very, very fluid. I might be at home in my own room, very comfortable, and I might feel very strange. There are moments when you feel very strange in your own surrounding. You may be at the most hostile place, but you started living there. God forbid, there are people who found that they are more at because they've been living for so long in a prison cell that they're at home in prison cell. Sometimes you go to a party and you feel at home over there, and there are moments when you feel very alienated. So home is very fluid. So all these characters, they're trying to find a concrete home somewhere, which is where the problem begins. First of all, is your body that you have to be at home with. Whatever features you have, whatever braces she had, whatever it was, she has to become comfortable with all of that. Burqa, the story, the mother says, this is your burqa and you have to, this is your parent. It will provide you security. You have to live in it. And she said, live in it. She's averse to the idea. The next day, she comes out of the washroom and she's walking past through the courtyard, and there are 50-year-old men sitting there who gaze at her. She goes to her room, takes off the burqa from the hook, puts it on, and sits on her in her own room in the charpai wearing a burqa. Her mother comes in. Are you going somewhere? Why are you wearing a burqa? And she says, no, I'm living in it. Because she finds that home, that comfort, that security in that. So, Sylvia Plath's poem, Parda. She's suffocating in the veil, she says the cloak of holes. A veil that has holes, but it is the veil of a bride. She's suffocating at that. She finds that. Parda 1, Parda 2 by Imtiaz Thakur. She's looking at it from an Aryan view. She looks at women as, covered by or stifled. Why? Because talking about something else. I actually posed this question to my set of students who they were Americans, and I asked them what is Parda when I was teaching them Sylvia Plath's Parda and Imtiaz Thakur. One said, when the Muslim men go out, they close their women in four walls or they wrap their women in this black gusate and say, but does it mean etymologically? So I said, means curtain. Do you have curtains in your house? They said, yes. So why you curtains? So for security, for protection, for comfort, for privacy. I said, I have thick curtains in my bedroom and I have sheer curtains in my door. No, I have no curtains in my lounge. It's my level of comfort in different rooms. Religiously explained, the parda is your level of comfort and protection. There's a blizzard going out outside. Could you go out without a jacket? No, ma'am. Why? Protection. Right? There'll be someone running in a pair of shorts. His level of comfort. So how you see yourself, if you're going to be very comfortable in your skin, then it's fine. So these women are trying to find a gaze outside of themselves. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you're othering yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be a male gaze. It is othering yourself. The day I'm wearing my PJs and I'm looking in the mirror, I don't really care how I look at. But on a day that I'm getting ready for a party, I look at it differently. There will be a day when I won't even see a pimple, which is very much there, and there'll be a day when I will only see the pimple. So gaze outside of yourself, but then that inward journey is what makes you beautiful, what makes you happy. keep going through that individuation process of befriending your multiple selves. And these stories are about how you befriend your multiple selves. And if you don't, what happens?
That's really hard in this society whereby you're judged by looks, or especially वो ये शादी वाला culture that you've written about. ये हमारा सारा local idiom है that we use, right? It's everything is there. Like आप relate कर पाते हो since we are part of the society. And there are things that I thought, okay, I too have gone through certain things. और उसके बाद the sense of self just shatters. And then you can't really be yourself. Just I'm kidding कि we need to understand our multiple selves, yeah, and we need to make peace with them. So बहुत time लगता है, I think, to just bind yourself and just get up and say, okay, this is me, or I don't care कि दुनिया में what others say.
So in the who am I, the I has multiple selves, right? And right now, if I'm sitting here, I'm also a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a interior designer, I'm a professor. So I've befriended my multiple selves to be here. You have probably befriended your multiple selves to be here too, right?
So we are doing that on a daily basis. We are constantly. My father was was a commando, but then 94-year-old in a frail body. He also wonders, what am I doing in this body? He has to befriend. So this process has to go on forever. Individuation. This process has to go on forever, and that is the question mark that I put of who am I? That's your quest of life, right? So these characters are. It has to be a constant quest. It's never a happily ever after. For example, you have all these fairy tales, which I've written many research papers on that. What are these? So there's this film called Into the Woods. In the beginning, there's all the fairy tales till happily ever after. The second half of it is what happens after. So Prince in Cinderella sees her prince galloping off with a woman on a horse, and she says, "What is this?" to him. He said, "When you ask for a prince charming, not a prince faithful." So your happily ever after is inside you. Again, why are you looking to the prince for that happily ever after?
It is difficult, it is tough, and it is an ongoing process, and that is the beauty of life. To keep.
But these days, women forget the idea of marriage. Then, when you say that, okay, we need to love ourselves, we need to understand ourselves. So, फिर हम equation से मर्द को निकाल देते हैं. Majorly आजकल जो हो रहा है ना, मैं आपको वो कहूँ. So, how do we make peace with this idea? फिर देखें, if you're happy with yourself, I think it is then that you can be happy with your partner. ऐसा ही है. लेकिन फिर when you know you do not, your happiness doesn't depend on your partner. So वो फिर,
Happiness doesn't, but your life is interconnected. Again, it comes down to dialogue. For me, feminism is not about equality, it's about equilibrium, right?
So if you're, for example, standing on a pinnacle, both the two of you are standing on a pinnacle, a man and a woman,
there will be a time one has to give space to the other to be there and the other one coming down. Again, we have, like, I don't believe in binaries because I have masculine consciousness within myself as much as feminine consciousness. If I'm driving at that masculine consciousness prevalent at that time. So I will be giving that role to my partner. First, my partner takes decisions according to his way of dealing with it. And I take decisions. There are many um, uh, instances where my decisions are given more credit and his decisions are given credit for other things. So it's not about equality. Like I remember my students who were in women's literature where I teach, they would bring in these posters or slides where a woman has muscles and I said, we are physically stronger than men. We don't have to show our muscles because a man cannot give birth to a child. We have a different kind of physical strength. They have a different kind of physical strength. Equilibrium means that we use both these strengths to become stronger as a couple, right? So that doesn't mean that I want to be equal to my husband. It means that we are constantly shifting spaces for each other, making space for each other. So when we realize this, and that goes for women are displaced, I've spoken about displacement in this, but men are also displaced. When you get married and move to another house, the man in his room is displaced. Now he can't make the mess that he has been making. He has to now wear a coat which is floral. He has to clean up after him. So he's also displaced. When we realize these things, only then we can take. If we keep dwelling in our displaced, it is a displacement. It is a relocation. Let's start looking at it as a relocation rather than a displace.
Am I right there? Because you've given a way to look at things, because oftentimes we forget that men too are, displaced. Of course, when you say that, how about we forget displacement? In a way, I'll move to relocation.
Relocation is very positive way we get it. Diaspora also is constantly in a flux, right? Because they're trying to take Pakistan to the and make a little Pakistan in America and Canada. What they forget is that they left Pakistan, right? They're gone there. Now that culture cannot be ever eradicated from their personality. But the culture that they are going into has to be adopted as well. So it becomes a very I think congenial environment to just conducive for new culture to be born. That is your relocation. Looking at it very positively. What the Canadian Prime Minister would always say is what I always say, the diversity, right? So you will bring that diversity to that land. If you keeping yourself strong to a culture and not changing, then why did you leave? Why did you leave? So you left for something better. If you think it is better, then adopt that too and adopt this too. And make a new way of looking at it. It's always going to be different. It can never be the same. When our diaspora lives there, it's never the same. They have to start thinking that they've been relocated for a reason. They relocated. This was their choice. Most of the parents are relocated. It's a different, the second generation, because they don't have that interior memory as, as said. The second generation never was part of that decision. So how do we expect them to behave the same way as the first generation that moved? So diaspora is a very complicated, that's why most of my stories are on that. And it's not just leaving a space and going to another space. It's feeling like you're in the storm outside, feeling alienated inside your own body.
It sense we humans were thrown our paradise into this world, so we can never find home here, right? Our soul keeps on searching for a home that's not there. So I think कि for the timing ही है कि हम सोचें कि हाँ I'm happy, yeah I'm good, क्योंकि जब there's no home तो फिर तो क्या?
So that's a biblical connotation. There is another connotation. Our religion also there was no mention of throwing. So we were brought up in this.
Not to, yes. Adam was, yeah, and was said there, yeah, the religiously it kind of, there is a
Not. I don't think they connect for both the rooms of looking at it. In any case, I did big farm a home here. A big and we come to that.
that was relocation.
Yes, actually, to me, that's relocation. For me, that's relocation. Like, we're all here, and we never, even if, like, the character in Clear Light of Day, Anita decides she lives in the house from the moment she's born till the end, all her siblings move out. So the house and that character become synonymous. You might have seen it a lot of students working on architecture being a living thing too. But that house also changes over the period of time. So the way she had been living in that house, also her connection to the house changes. It depletes. It gathers dust. And at the end, she decides that I'm going to take out all of the things in my house and I'm going to dust them and then I'm going to set them up properly. So it's again a way of looking at your surrounding. You may not have displaced yourself, but over the period of time, the house changed, we changed her too, she changed as well, she became older, her way of looking at the house is going to be different. Hence, you may feel like my dedication is to my girls, may they be at home wherever they are. For me, that's the best prayer dua I could give my daughters. So wherever they are, if they feel at home, it's fine. It's fine. It doesn't have to be a house. It's a feeling. Yeah, it's really. And that feeling can come from inside also. It does come from inside.
And that is the best thing.
And this character who has a miscarriage, how she disconnects, she has that part, that baby is part of her body, So that also how you have to make peace with that. It's a very difficult thing to make peace with. And why do we not talk about how difficult it is? The yellow wallpaper, we're talking about postpartum depression. Nobody was talking about it. And years ago, yellow wallpaper came out. We've started, I think it was a play, I don't know, Mrs. Shimi Minister, something, which was talking about postpartum depression. So why are we not talking about these issues? We must talk about them to address them. My motto has been address to redress.
So, reading your book has brought me to this conclusion that you are wholly rooted in tradition. Okay. Yeah. When we read about the Baloch community, ऐसे लगता है you're part of it. Okay. Then we read about Punjab, लगता है आप उसका part है. So it's like you know everything. एक you know all rounded sin cheese, right? You're like opinions. They adapt and they also they're sponges, right? So they are kind of so we are all that. I'm not going to say that I'm a writer and you're not. You're a storyteller too. You are going to go home and tell someone what happened today. So we're all storytellers. And there's a story here, there's a story there. When you're sitting in a classroom, there are stories sitting there too. You just have to sift and find out what connects with you. So I never make notes when I travel. I used to write travelogues for the news, yes, but that too was I never noted down anything. It was always my memory. So even if I haven't been to a certain place, I can recreate it in my mind. And I've been to almost all of the places here. Balochistan I haven't been to. I haven't been to Canada. I've been to all the other places here, but I haven't been to Canada. But I try to recreate the space of Canada the way I have been reading about it or watched it. And because the problem isn't Canada, the problem is the alienation that you feel. That can be anywhere. Like Sri Lanka, that woman was my trigger. That the way she was carrying that burden. And very naturally, because this is her daily routine to do so. Nobody would even look at her. I had to defamiliarize myself to, think about her. And at that moment, she wasn't a story for me. When I got back, she became a story for me. Through your podcast, so I'd like to, like I just mentioned that we're all storytellers. They must tell a story, our way of looking at it. And let the others then read into it. That's it. So we are lacking that because we don't have publishing houses, but we must do that. Our part of the region is lacking that. And I remember my book, Cultural Confessions of Khalid Hosseini as well. I had a book launch in Afghanistan. And that was when in one room, there were boys and girls sitting together. And they didn't have their separate laptops, so there was one laptop. I was intrigued by the idea that they had read Khalid Hosseini and they had so many questions to ask me. And that was a connection I could feel with them. So these stories, they connect you from so many places. I remember my paper was on Aruninder Dika, the white tiger, and it's about Bangalore and everything. And it was in Dubai. It was a conference. So this man comes up to me, shakes hands with me. He said, "I'm from Bangalore." I could not describe it. So these stories connect you. Mm. So we must use art and literature as a form of dialogue. And what else can we do to promote literature? Keep writing. And in today's world, we don't. We have Insta poets, we have Facebook poets, we have podcasts like yours, we have this OTT platform that is out there. Each platform has its own agenda, right? I've noticed. So why should your voice not be heard as a different way of looking at a thing? So it's become difficult with the competition, but it's become easier with the communication. So you should be out there. Dr. C, and I feel enlightened covering you, and I've learned a lot today. I think this is the only podcast where I learned more than I added. And thank you so much for your time and energy. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing because these are the platforms where the newer generation is connecting with more. And we must be heard, all of us. And not just me. I'm glad that you are interviewing others and reading their books and providing this
perspective to others, this space. So I'm very happy for you. Thank you.
Thank you.